tshwanetse ba panisha party ya demokraga jaaka ntša e nwang mai e re o bona gore e nkane o itsenya lee e le molelo mo ganong ka tsatsi la dithopo tsenya ka mokoraga lee le le molelo mo ganong le swatoge legano e itse gore bogodu wa bolaya.
Today, I'm only responding to a recent remark made by a member of parliament and an assistant minister in the UDC government that likened the members of the former ruling Botswana Democratic Party to a dog that eats eggs. In traditional Tswana custom, he says, such a dog is punished by forcing a boiled egg into its mouth until it bends and never steals again. The MP goes further to suggest that members of the former government should be treated in this manner. Such language, for me, as a person who has studied genocide issues, such language is not simply political exaggeration or metaphor. It is dangerous, it is inflammatory, and profoundly irresponsible. It is the kind of rhetoric that historically precedes acts of political violence and, in extreme cases, genocide. Genocidal violence does not begin with killing. It begins with words. The danger of a dehumanizing speech is that it ultimately, inadvertently somehow, ends up leading to violence. Every genocide in history begins with speech that stripped a group of its humanity, or that strips a group of its humanity. Before bodies are destroyed, identities are degraded. The Holocaust began with Jews being likened to rats and vermin. In Rwanda, the Tutsis were called Inyezi, cockroaches. In Bosnia, Muslims were called disease carriers. These metaphors made it psychologically and socially possible to inflict cruelty without remorse. By likening political opponents to a dog that deserves to be burned, the MP entered the dangerous territory, in my view, of dehumanization. Once people are spoken of as animals, the moral restraints that protect them from harm begin to weaken. What follows next is not always predictable, but it is never harmless. Words shape moral imagination, and when language degenerates, so too does moral order. So, in Tswana culture, particularly based on the concept of Boto, this is the highest moral ideal around which we rally. It teaches that even in disagreement, one must recognize the humanity of the other. To describe fellow citizens who share equal dignity under the Constitution in animalistic and punitive terms is to violate this sacred ethic. It tears at the social fabric that binds Botswana together as a peaceful people. The health of our democracy, in my view at least, rests not only on free elections, but also on the ethical tone of our national conversations. When our leaders speak with contempt, the nation learns contempt. When they dehumanize, the nation becomes desensitized. The result is not merely political division, but a corrosion of the collective conscience of the nation. So genocidal rhetoric itself, just the rhetoric, just using language like that, is itself violence. Genocidal rhetoric must not be dismissed as exaggeration. It is violence in linguistic form. It prepares the ground for exclusion, for persecution, and ultimately for destruction. Rwanda's tragedy stands as a warning. Radio broadcasts that dehumanized a segment of the population made genocide imaginable and eventually executable and accepted. And so in that light, the statement made in Tabong must not be trivialized as campaign talk. It crosses a red line. The political leaders must be reminded that their words carry moral and social weight. A democracy that tolerates hate speech risks sowing seeds of its own undoing. So Botswana has long stood as a beacon of peace, stability, and on the continent, peace and stability on the continent. But peace is not self-sustaining. It must be guarded by vigilance. It must be guarded through ethical leadership and a refusal to tolerate hate. We have an obligation to refuse to tolerate any form of hate speech. Our nation must reaffirm that democracy thrives on debate, not degradation, or on persuasion and not on persecution. And so public discourse must return to the high ground of respect, restraint, and responsibility. It is the duty of all leaders, political, religious, and civic, to condemn dehumanizing language wherever it appears. Silence in the face of such rhetoric is complicity. It is complicity. And so just to conclude, I want to say that the comparison of political opponents to animals deserving of torture is not just distasteful, it is dangerous. It is how genocide begins, and it must be confronted before it goes any further. Let us be reminded, let us all remember that genocide begins with words, but so does peace. The words we choose will determine the Botswana we bequeath to the next generation. One of mutual destruction, or one rooted in Boto and shared humanity. So that's what I want to say this morning, that leaders have a particular special obligation to be careful of what they say, so that it does not turn into hate language. I hope the MP in question will respond to this, and I hope he will withdraw those words on the floor of Parliament. I hope, because he has a forum that we do not have. I hope he will use the floor of Parliament to withdraw those words. Actually, His Excellency the President, even when saying we are a violent nation, even in that he was really just trying to call us to order, to be more reasonable, and make sure that we protect each other, and that the laws of the country are so aligned that they protect us all against all forms of abuse. But this one is a raw outburst irresponsibility, of gross irresponsibility to describe fellow citizens that way. Politicians in Botswana get used to getting away with anything and everything. But I think here I'm addressing this matter to a specific person who is in a public office. And if he was a private citizen that does not occupy a public office, it would be none of my business to talk to him. But in terms of him being a person who has been elected to public office, above that, His Excellency the President has honored him with a cabinet position. I think he occupies such an important public space that he cannot make irresponsible statements and hope to get away with them. And I'm not even saying this because I know that I may be accused that I'm picking this because I belong to a different political, maybe I align more with the people that but regardless of everything else, these words represent gross irresponsibility. I think even his own colleagues in cabinet would not agree with that kind of language. Ke bidiwa Rupert Hambira. Ke ne ke re dumelang go tle bareetsi ba le dirisang thulaganyo e ba le kgonang go itlhella mahoko a. Ke ne ke re na hela ka isi jaaka motho ke a kgamaditswe ke mahoko a builweng ke mongwe wa maparlamente a rona yo gapele mothusa tona Maloba ko rallying ko tsabong a re batho ba puso e hitileng ba party ya Domgraha ba tshwana le ntja e utswang mae e reng o e tshwara o bo bidisa le santse le mollo jana o bo le tsenya moganong la yone o tswala legano la yone gore le hisiwe ke lele e ska tlhola e utswa gape. Mahoko a ga se mahoko hela a go khatlisa le mahoko hela a go dirisa a gore motho ka dirisa ko mabaleng a dipolotiki ke mahoko a mo mogolong yo ntseng jalo yo mo boeteledipeleng jwa setšhaba a tlhokang boikarabelo a tshwanetse gore a boele ko morago. Ke mahoko a leng gore ke mahoko a kilo, ke mahoko a supang gore go se tlhoka go tlotla mo go bidiwang the rule of law, gore motho mo lehatsheng le tshwanang la rona yana ga molato go itlhele makgotla a ditsheko a mmonye molato ka sepe se a se dirileng. Ga gona ope yo o nang le thata ya gore o ka re semamang o dirile molato wa gore a punishiwe jaana a kgotsa a otlhaiwe jaana. Makgotla a ditsheko ke yone hela a nang le thata ya go dira jalo. So ke rile mahoko a mo puong ya sekgwa a bidiwa a ntseng jaana a bidiwa genocidal rhetoric. Ke re ke mahoko a reng batho ba dirisa ka moso ga ba bangwe ba tsogologa ba bola ba bangwe kgotsa ba tsogologela ba utlwisa botlhoko go ebele go kile ga simolola ka one e le na tlaetsang batho gore go ka buiwa hela jalo ka ba bangwe me motho a halola a sena go rialo. Re a bonye ko Germany yo le wa dingwaga tsa dintwa a dirisiwa kgatlhanong le Bajuda. Re a bonye ko Rwanda le Burundi, re a bonye ko Rwanda a dirisiwa, re a bonye ko South Sudan a dirisiwa, re a bonye ko the Ottoman Empire a dirisiwa, re a bonye in the first genocide of the 20th century a dirisiwa ke ma-Germany kgatlhanong le ba Herero and the Nama. Mahoko a ga siama ebile go ga siama go dirisiwa ke mogolo, ga siama go dirisiwa ke motho yo a nang le boikarabelo mo tsamaisong ya puso. So nna ke hano gompieno gore ke itebaganye le ene mokaulengwe yo ke mo kope gore a boele mahoko a ko morago ka gore ga siama ke mahoko a sa siamelang setšhaba, ke mahoko a senang botho, ke mahoko a sa siamelang go aga setšhaba ga rona. Le ha go ntse jang re sologela gore bagolo ba setšhaba bone ba ba hilweng marapo a tsamaiso puso ke bone ba re kgalemelang, ke bone ba re dirang gore re ska ra tsogologela ba bangwe, re ska ra dirisa dikgoka, re ska ra dirisa dikgoka re rente molao, the law to take its course. Mogolo ga a tshwanna go dirisa mahoko a ntseng jalo. Ke gona ka mo ke mo go etlang mokaolengwe gore a dirise opportunity ya floor ya parliament la kope speaker for an opportunity to rise on this matter a ba withdraw mahoko a dirileng kgotsa ka gore ga a dira ko ntle ga palamente gongwe nna le batho ba bangwe ba re akanyeng jaaka re akanya re mo challenge mo makgotleng a ditsheko gore a boele mahoko a ko morago ga se mahoko a siametseng I think le ene mogolo ke bua jaana gore le ene mogolo Tautona motlegi Tautona a mmitse a mo kgalemelele mahoko a gore ga se mahoko a ka dirisiwang ka ga re se re utlwe Tautona a dirisa mahoko a ntseng jalo ha ile motho sa Tautona ga se re utlwe matona a mangwe a puso a dirisa mahoko a ntseng jalo mahoko a kilo mahoko a sa lebaganang bagolo gore ba ka dirisa
segolo ja go tshwantshanya motho le ntja ebile
hela go tshwantshanya hela go le pele ga o bua ka punishment go tshwantshanya motho le ntja go lekanya motho le ntja gore motho o tshwanetse go punishiwa ka ntja le ha le yone ntja tota e sa tshwanela go dirwa jalo mme gore motho o tshwanetse go punishiwa jaaka go ka punishiwa ntja hela I think ke mahoko a tlhokang boikarabelo tota